Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of joint transportation. Go ahead and start off with roll call, please.
Senator Brennan,
Excused.
Senator Furphy,
Here.
Senator Cole,
Present.
Senator Pappas,
Here.
Representative Berger,
Aye. Present here.
I am here.
I am here.
Representative Nemec,
Excused.
Representative Obermuller,
Excused.
Representative O'Hearn,
Here.
Representative Pendergraft,
Here.
Representative Smith,
Here.
Representative Stivar,
Present.
Representative Wiley,
Here.
Co-Chairman Boner,
Here.
Chairman Brown.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Right. Thank you, staff. All right. So we're going to start off this morning, just again, kind of give everybody a heads up in the audience. If you did not listen yesterday, we have 2 members that were excused. Representative Nemec was injured in a motorcycle accident last week. Thankfully has been discharged from the hospital and is resting at home right now, but please keep him and his family in your thoughts and prayers. And then Representative Obermuller is also out, had a death in the family and is tending to issues with personal matters. So again, please keep both of them in your thoughts and prayers if you would. Be much appreciated. We do have a full agenda today. We've also got a packed house. So brevity is always appreciated, especially on a Friday afternoon when everybody wants to go home. But with that, Mr. Chairman, do you have any comments?
No.
All right, then we will get started right away here. And it looks like we have YDOT up here this afternoon or this morning. I'm already getting ahead of myself. Director, welcome and thank you for joining us. And thanks for bringing your team along.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Try to get to my notes. In brevity on a Friday, like you said, I'll try to keep my comments relatively short, but most of you know me, but just if it pleases you, Mr. Chairman, I'll just give as the new guy, I'll give you a little bit of Darren 101, just so you know who is speaking in front of you and who is the interim director now with YDOT. Again, Darren Westby, interim director of YDOT. A lot of you may have seen and discussed with me over the last 7-8 years with as the director of state parks and cultural resources. The governor appointed me as interim 9 weeks ago. And so I got 9 weeks under my belt. It's been a whirlwind tour. Mr. Chairman and committee, thank you for your time. And just want to apologize to the chairman and the staff on the lateness of our submissions of our information. We had an internal discussion that possibly could have went a little different way. I think we put some stopgaps in place to hopefully not have that happen again this time, but totally my fault. And I'll take that one on the chin and hopefully we'll make sure that we do a better job next time for the committee, give you a little bit more time for the information that you have. Quickly, Mr. Chairman, mechanical engineer by degree, spent a little bit of time understanding that in Wyoming, we don't design and build cars. And so quickly shifted my personal or professional engineering challenge into the civil engineering world, which obviously in Wyoming civil engineering, there's a lot of potential jobs. And so that's where I landed and ended up getting my civil engineering professional license in the state of Wyoming. Worked in the private sector in a civil architectural engineering firm for several years, and then found a great opportunity at the state parks as a project engineer, doing basically what I was doing in the private sector, which is horizontal and vertical construction and engineering. And so had the opportunity in parks for the last 22 years, working my way up to, like I said, be the director there. until the governor tapped me over here. I'm also a community engagement, community involvement centric person. I spent many years coaching every youth sport I think Cheyenne had to offer for my kids, and a lot of other organizations, nonprofits, but spent probably the last 29 years with Cheyenne Frontier Days, working my way as a volunteer all the way up to committee chairman, general chairman. I even was the CEO there for about 6 months. And then while we got a new CEO, and then sat on the board of directors, chairman of the board of directors. And just last week was fortunate enough to get a nod from the Hall of Fame. And so coming this fall, I'll be inducted into the CFD Hall of Fame. So pretty honored in that regard as well. And hopefully next week, Mr. Chairman, for the last 3 years, the wife and I have been working on a little project on the west edge of downtown of Cheyenne to create a bar and grill and a brewery. And hopefully on Thursday, maybe if all goes well, that will finally be open after 3 years of construction. So a lot going on in the life, but really appreciate the grace that you guys have shown us getting us to this point. Like I said, it's been 9 weeks. Really looking forward to working with all of you coming up in the interim, and really appreciate the efforts that we're probably going to have to take over the interim to be successful this year. As an agency, we're wrapping up the snow season, which is really hard to fathom when we have 90 degree temperatures, but it really is wrapping up. As of this weekend, all mountain passes will be open. If not even today, they'll be open for the Memorial Day weekend, which is great. Gotta just give a nod to the crews out there that have worked really, really hard all winter long, just to keep the roads as open as possible with the winter that we've had. It's just been tremendous. And then turning around literally on the same day they dropped the plow, they filled the back of the truck with pothole patch and get out there and start patching what this bad winter has had. And if you guys recall, this winter, not only was it a bad snow winter, but the freeze thaw was astronomical. We'd have 60-degree days and then sub-zero temperature the next day, and then back to 70. That freeze thaw is not good on anything, let alone horizontal construction. And so the efforts that the team put in this winter are Herculean. And to get the job done, I just can't say enough. In a lot of my travels that I've been fortunate enough to get out of Cheyenne and get out and see some of the team out in the field, I think the word that I could use is fatigue. Most of our districts have been down 50% in the maintenance personnel and law enforcement as well. But the pride and just the passion that they have out there to ensure that the roads are open as much as they can. We had crews coming out of all parts of the state of Wyoming to help augment the forces that were short, especially on the I80 corridor. So that's a hardship on those people that have to leave their families for a couple of weeks at a time. But the goal of our mission, to have a safe and effective transportation system, doesn't fall on deaf ears with the crews out in the field, that they're going to do whatever they can to keep the mission successful. And so with that, I just really want to take a moment and just really applaud their efforts and their abilities to work in the conditions that they have to work in. And I would also invite any of you that want to see what these fine people do to ensure that you are safe on the road. I invite you to go take a ride in a snowplow, not on a good day. I mean, I almost dare you to go when there's a snowstorm, try to do a ride along with either a highway patrol or a snowplow. It's I haven't had the opportunity to do it. In my old position, I had the opportunity to go on a snowcat and groom some trails in the middle of the night in a blizzard. I'll probably never do that again, but it gave me a great appreciation of what these people have to do. And so this upcoming winter, if I'm fortunate enough to get in the permanent director position, I'm planning on getting out there and doing a ride along, and I'd invite you guys all to do the same. I think it will give you a greater appreciation of what your state employees do to try to ensure that commerce is open, roads are open, travel is safe, and that's our priority. So,
Director, yesterday, this committee had a good opportunity with the military department to ride some Blackhawks. Went down and saw Camp Guernsey, and then it was my understanding that today we were just going to load up in some of those maintenance vehicles and drive up and down I-25 for that same.
bring your kidney belt, Mr. Chairman. It might be a little rough, but appreciate I can make that happen.
Thank you, Director. We appreciate it. And from the chairman's position, certainly I'm probably speaking for Chairman Boner as well. Thank your entire staff. Again, knowing that you guys have been struggling with staffing over the past couple of years, and our commendations to your entire staff for continuing to do the work that they're doing and keeping this state is as good a condition as it is. So truly appreciate what they're doing on a daily basis, and especially that highway patrol as well. I've seen some of those videos from this winter out there in the middle of the blizzards that we had, and they were out there rescuing people. So huge commendation to you and the leadership that's behind you right now. But thank you for everything that you guys have done. So
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Definitely pass those along. Mr. Chairman, committee, just really quick, and like I said, the 9 weeks, just some observations that I've seen. The agency has a great purpose, trying to improve the commerce and the economics of the state, while also improving the quality of life for our citizenry. That's a general purpose, but the mission is to have that safe and effective transportation system. But probably most important that I like is the values, the respect, the integrity, dedication, all the things that I think truly benefit the state of Wyoming from the standpoint that we have the ability and the people within our organization that have those kind of values that just basically just say you're a good human. And so I think all of us would have those same values. And so I'm really, from a person that's coming in new, knowing that that's their mission and their vision and their values, it's easy for me to sit here as a director and say, yes, I can buy into this organization and how they're going about doing things. I already talked about the passionate team, so I won't double down on that, but we are focused pretty heavily right now, as I was talking about the fatigue, that pride and that passion doesn't buy groceries. And so we need to really double down our efforts on thinking outside the box on how to get them more help. It's not that we don't have the positions. We have the positions, we just can't get people to fill them. And so really want to take that opportunity to thank you all and the governor for the back-to-back compensation increase that really helps us getting to a competitive market with our employees in not only the recruitment of new employees, but the retention of others. And Representative Berger and I were chatting, what do we need? And I think we need to continue to think outside the box on how to make, public employment desirable again. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, a demographic thing. What is it that we need to do to stop beating our head against the wall and say, I don't know why people don't want to work for us. We need to think and change how we think to try to recruit those people. And again, I think the compensation will help on the retention piece, but it's also going to help on the marketing piece as well. So thank you for those efforts. I think the other thing that I can say on an observation is just, I'm proud to say that safety is part of that value package. Over the course of the last couple of years, following Director Reiner's lead, the agency went heavy into safety, trying to ensure that our employees and the people that are traveling the roads are safe. Our incidences, our accidents have gone down with this effort, and really proud of the team for really embracing the programs, the new programs, the directives from all levels to try to ensure that everybody makes it home safe, regardless whether you're our employee or a traveling public. And that's probably one of my most proudest things as well, is just that people are taking it seriously because it's a serious matter. And so really appreciate that from the team's perspective. And lastly, on the thank yous, I just want to say thank you all for that funding the statewide enterprise WildLink program that pretty much all communities, all law enforcement, all individuals that need to communicate from a statewide perspective have that ability to do so in an effective way. And by funding that enterprise program, it's not just a YDOT. Yeah, yes, we run it and we organize it, but we're not the only ones using it. And I think you guys know that just as well as anybody, but funding that at that enterprise level through the general fund is going to be a huge improvement for the entire state. And so thank you for that. Just a quick RIS-TIS update, the Transportation Information System. Sorry, Senator Cole.
Yes, Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question before we get too far down the road here on other things. It is the money that was used for WildLink, previously. How is that money now going to be spent? Because obviously you were redirecting money funds at that point in time. So what are your plans for the future with the WildLink money that's now been freed up? Could you expound on that? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thanks for that question. I'm going to ask Nate to come up and I'm going to apologize right now. I'm going to be phoning a friend as much as possible. One, I don't know as much as I probably should at this point, but I want to make sure that I'm given the accurate answers to those questions. But thank you for the grace on that.
Mr. Smolinski, if you'll introduce yourself, please, for the record.
Mr. Chairman, Nate Smolinski. I am the CTO for WYDOT. Senator Cobb, the funds that we were currently using right now, they were 70% MRG funds. So we seek guidance to see how we're going to be able to utilize that, if it's going to go back to the system or if it'll go back into the fund. We're still waiting to hear back from the state budget department on that.
Anything further, Senator Coleman? No. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Nate.
Director.
Thanks, Nate. And again, I'll try not to play musical chairs as much as possible, but phoning a friend is going to be used quite a bit today.
We understand.
Thank you. Just quick update on the RIS. We went out to RFP. We were selected a contractor. We're in the middle of contract negotiations with them and hopefully have them under contract here pretty soon. So, and then we'll start moving forward with that. But that's just a really quick down and dirty. If there's any questions, obviously I can bring up Mr. Rossetti.
Any questions on RIS committee? Okay,
Great. Thank you.
continue, please.
So, Mr. Chairman, we'll dig right into the agenda. Obviously today we're going to be talking about the I-80. It's a big topic. There's a lot of issues going on with it: funding, safety, maintenance, reconstruction, bridge. There's just a lot that needs to happen on I-80. And so I appreciate the topic through the Management Council. We'll hit some CDL things that have come up over the year. We'll touch on electric vehicle, autonomous vehicle, and then we'll wrap up with some YDOT practices and procedures per the agenda. And so with that, Mr. Chairman and committee, we can roll into the agenda. Absolutely. Great.
At your pleasure.
So the first topic I believe in the agenda is the I-80. There's and I'll bring some people up here when they're ready, but there's a lot of things going on. Obviously, traffic crashes and closures, differential speed limit questions, and then there are some questions about methods of how other states are doing it through tax and differential fuel. I just want you to know that we've been working with the industry, Truckers Association, General Contractors Association, working with tourism. We'll be getting with the taxpayers as well as with the electric vehicle, autonomous vehicle industry as well, trying to ensure that we're not in a vacuum or in a silo trying to come up with solutions or ideas. We're really focused on bringing our partners to the table and helping us come up with some good solutions with this. And these topics are not, well, as you can tell, they're not easy to grasp. Otherwise, they would already be done by now. But it's just really broad, and everybody has different reasons for improvements on I-80. Winter closures. It obviously it impacts the commerce. It impacts the economy. We were at the Wyoming Truckers Association, Mr. Ryan. I had a good conversation with the Ryans, and they were saying that they've lost, just in, this last winter, probably over $1.5 million in gross revenue just because the roads were closed. Now, they also understand why the roads were closed, and there's not a whole lot we or anybody could do about it. When it's whiteout blizzard conditions, nobody's safe to be on the roads, let alone, the traveling public. And so then we roll right into spring, the road hazards, like I was talking about, coming off the freeze thaw. We have potholes that I got one email from not a constituent, I guess, of mine, probably one of yours, Senator Cole. But they said a Volkswagen Volkswagen could fall in one of those potholes. And so it's real. Obviously, you probably traveled and you may have hit some of those out on the southwest part of the state as well. But we just are rolling really fast from winter to road hazard, freeze thaw patch into summer. The cone season. I think there's even an article in the newspaper today about the orange cone season. It's winter and construction in Wyoming. Then we just rinse and repeat, right? It's just what we do. And so again, I'm very proud of the team. We have obviously a high vacancy right now, and I've already talked about the pride and passion. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll probably ask Chief Engineer, Assistant Chief Engineers Dehoff and Fulton to kind of go over some of the initial conversations that we have. I believe submitted in your packet is some of the I-80 traffic data, the crash data, if that's your pleasure.
That'll work.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Berger.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And can I add one more topic to I-80?
Sure.
Not just that, but a lot of groups out there adopt that 2-mile litter areas, but there's some real rural areas on I-80 that don't get cleaned up. And then we have to use your staff to clean up a lot of those spots on the side of the road and we're talking materials, not paper, but fecal material or bodily just fluids that are just bad and biohazards. But and we got to figure out some things on that too, because it doesn't make that roadway very desirable.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative, thanks for that comment. And that's part of the concern about the Adopt a Highway program is, it's people aren't trained on what to do, how to pick up, and now with fentanyl being kind of a big issue, training that is even more difficult, right? And so even our staff are trained, but I'm very concerned about their safety as well. I did have the opportunity to travel out in the Southwest, and because I did get some complaints about why is there so much litter on the side of the highway, and I just mentally I did my own little market research on this. Is every truck parking area that we have out there, if there's a dumpster or a trash can, there is more litter around those areas than when I pass one of the parking areas that don't have one. And so what I'm feeling, and I got some individuals here that can probably back me up, is people, all right, I'll go back with an example with Frontier Days. We always put a trash can and a recycle bin next to each other in hopes that people will make the right decision if the decision is easy for them, right? And so if you have a plastic bottle, Coke bottle, you would throw it in the recycle bin. If you had to walk 20 foot, you just throw it in the trash can. So putting them side by side made sense. unfortunately, with putting a trash bin at a parking area right now, in my eye, and I probably haven't really talked to these guys enough, people were just rolling down their window and just throwing the bag of trash out as they're driving by, as opposed to walking 100 yards from their truck to put it in the trash bin. And so we don't have people that go around there and grab all the trash on the side of the bin and throw it in the bin for them. So then, of course, we have Wyoming winter winds and it blows the trash around. So there's an internal discussion right now as to, are the trash bins at these places actually working, or are they hurting? Pack it in, pack it out. From where I came from, that was a common theme and a common statement of, if you're going to bring, trash to a state park, take it home with you. And so we may be adopting something similar to that, just to minimize the amount of blowing trash that we're seeing around the state. And then on a short staff perspective, how do you roll that into, all right, we want you to prioritize patching the Volkswagen, potholes. And now you have to pick up trash and try to be safe on both regards. Patching a hole in an interstate when you're standing at 0 and people are cruising by you at 80 miles an hour is not a safe thing either. But then you go on the side of the road, you're just as slow picking up trash. So there's a lot here, Mr. Chairman and committee, that I'm trying to get my head wrapped around and help these guys come up with some potential solutions, but really appreciate that topic. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will try to sit back and let these guys carry on with the presentation.
Yes, Co-Chairman.
Yeah, so and since you brought up the trash collection, I'm just wondering what the status is of that volunteer program, the Adopt a Highway program. Because, whenever I go through Cheyenne, I'm looking at names of, say, organizations from the 400th Missile Squadron that was decommissioned in 2005, and their, names are, their organization is still up there as owning that stretch of highway. The unit hasn't existed in 18 years. So I'm wondering how you administer that. How does that work?
Tom?
And gentlemen, the three of you that have just joined us, feel please, first time you speak, just announce your name for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Tom Dioff, Assistant Chief Engineer of Operations. Senator Boner, to answer your question, the program's going very well. What we do is this time of year, we will make phone calls to remind the groups to get out there. There is a set number of times that they need to get out there each year to keep up their sign to show that that is their area to pick up. This is the time of year, Representative Berger, that our guys are balancing priorities on what to get to. And it is, as soon as that snow melts, all the trash shows up. And we totally get that. So we do ask our guys in their work programs during the week if they can fit in a day in there on top of potholes, working with the landowners to get their, animals out into their ranches, out in their yards. So they're balancing fence, potholes, and then also putting plows back on. So it's a priority. We do reach out to workforce services too. We'll supplement our crews. If we have an area, we try and hit those urban areas first because that's where we get a lot of the complaints. But as the director said, it's those truck parking areas too, where we didn't see it all winter and it shows up. And it is because people start traveling and we get the phone calls. So we do try and get that going. But the litter control program is working well. I think some people are hesitant to do it because we did talk about the hazards that they do get into there, but we do talk to them about safety on that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I think your question was how up to date are our signs that may or may not, the group may or may not even be in existence. So are we keeping up with those individual groups, or is there somebody else coming to do the work, even though the group is not around anymore?
So I don't know exactly if we're keeping up on there, but there is a requirement that they have to do so many pickups a year to keep the sign up. That is something I can check into with the districts to check on that. But usually if they do not do the required pickups, then the sign does come down and their 2 mile or 4 mile area that they take, it goes away.
Right. And so
Mr. Chairman, to be clear, I mean, I guess I'll wait for an answer on my specific question, but it's more than one 2-mile stretch of highway. There's several going into Cheyenne. That's just, just because I drive that road a lot. So, I mean, I think we need to answer that question. Like I said, the 400th Missile Squadron has not existed since 2005. And so I think that we need some more information maybe on it, just, why are you 18 years behind in that? And then I'd say about at least 6 to 8 miles worth of Interstate I-25, and how prevalent is that throughout the state? I think, maybe we can get a little bit more information to, bridge the gap here a little bit. So.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, the road still looks good, so somebody's picking it up. We might just need to update who the signage is, so.
All right. And committee, just for your clarification, as well as everybody here, we have a very tight schedule today. So if we do have major questions that are on the topics, that's fine. But if we start straying off topic, I will probably wrangle us back in. And no, you're okay. But just want to make sure that we are staying on task and on topic. We've got a lot of work to do, and in an effort to get everybody home at a decent time this evening, and not stressing about closing those eyes behind the wheel. Want to make sure that we're staying on topic. So I don't know who wants to start this off, if it's Mr. Gillette or Mr. Dehoff, but who wants to? Oh, and I was wrong all the way around. So all right, the floor is yours for I-80. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith Fulton, Assistant Chief Engineer for Planning and Engineering. And I would just quickly go over the traffic data that we provided to you in your handout. So at the top of that, we have the I-80, and you'll notice it says weighted. Because if you look through I-80, all 403 miles of it along the length, the average annual daily traffic does change throughout. So we could have high spots of around 22 to 24,000 in the Green River, Rock Springs area, Cheyenne area, down to just over 8,000 in other areas. And so the weighted average that's what it is. It's an average of all that data over the across the entire length. And one of the questions was asked was out of state versus in state. And that's something that we do not have. We have a lot of traffic counters that'll count number of traffic and weigh in motion for weights of axles, but we don't have anything that actually tracks plates. So we did, but we do have a counting crew, and that's their job, is to go out and count traffic throughout the state. And so we did send them out to take a look. And so that the information you have is based on a couple collections. We had people sit at each border and start looking at out of state versus in state. So these aren't, so the numbers shown are, from those counts, we're pretty confident that we think that, as we did the statistics, that they're going to be pretty close to what we see on a daily basis. Again, it was only on a couple counts, but I think we're comfortable saying about probably 80 to 85% of traffic is out of state that is just passing directly through the state from border to border. We also provided all information on crashes. So a total of over 8,100 crashes over the last 5 years on I-80, and about 51% of those involve a commercial vehicle. And of those crashes of commercial vehicles, 90% of those did have an out-of-state license, driver's license. If you look at all crashes, about 76% of all crashes have an out-of-state driver's license. And then we provided some additional information on blowovers. So just, what we've seen is 239 again over that 5-year period. And so,
Mr. Fulton, just out of curiosity here, you said 76% of those have out-of-state driver's licenses. I'm guessing, looks like awesome statistician work here. But do you guys have a breakdown of those that are occurring between winter and summer? My suspicion is that when they're coming from out of state, the majority of them are going to be on the winter time, but I just don't know if you have any of that, or if you guys have compiled it down that nitty gritty.
I don't think we did not, but we did look at 78% of the commercial vehicle crashes occur when a road have ice or frost on them, or snow. So I think it'd probably be a similar percentage for the vehicles too.
Committee, any questions on the I-80 statistics as presented so far? Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One statistic I'd like to see is the speed over 100 miles an hour on that interstate.
Senator Purphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. It says approximately 90% of commercial vehicle crashes involve out-of-state drivers. When I was visiting with someone from Little America, they were pointing out a lot of those drivers are actually foreigners outside the United States. Do you have any data on that? Thank you.
Mr. Fulton?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, no, not that I know of. I think we're just collecting the driver's license.
Any further questions? Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair.
So on the light, high profile vehicle, obviously we've seen plenty of those closures, especially in the last year. What are the enforcement mechanisms for making sure, I mean, it seems to me it'd be impossible to distinguish just by looking at it, difference between a semi, a commercial vehicle that's loaded up versus one that's empty. Is there an enhanced penalty for violating that closure? I think that's part of the frustration is when you see all those blowovers, clearly somebody thought that those rules just didn't apply to them. And that's 100% preventable. It closes down. That is something that, could make a difference. You talk about the amount of impact that has on every other commercial vehicle that's following the rules, and they lose millions of dollars in revenue. I think that's something that I think we're all a little frustrated with. So what's the enforcement mechanism for somebody who violates that, even if it's after the fact with an enhanced penalty? How's that work?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I'm going to ask Lieutenant Colonel to come up and help with this answer. Now, while he's coming up, I know right now, unfortunately, the only route that we can go down is once they blow over, then obviously they get cited for obviously being too light and too high profile if it's closed for roads.
Director, I hate to say this to you, but your Lieutenant Colonel, he did not pick up your phone a friend. So
right.
I see
That's
Captain
right.
Wyrick here, though, that
Captain can answer the same question. So
I happen to think he might have the answer as well. So,
Yeah.
Captain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Captain Van Wyrick with the Wyoming Highway Patrol. Can you restate your question, Co-Chairman?
How do you enforce a light, high profile vehicle closure?
So when it's posted by either maintenance or our troopers, our boots on the ground in the area that they close that to that, and it's based on the weather, winds, because when they close it, there's sustained winds of over 60 miles an hour in that area. So that's the premise of why it gets closed for those. To actually determine if a truck is light, high profile, there's no statutory definition for that. I've been on the Transportation Safety Council with the Wyoming Trucking Association. We've asked this question, and I mean, how do you tell a truck that has 40,000 pounds of payload versus 8,000 pounds of payload, in there, if it's going to get blown over or not? Because that truck may go through and the next one just gets hammered. So
Is there a penalty for, say, after they get blown over? I don't want to pile on, but I mean, like I said, it causes closures. It's a risk to the driver. It ruins it for literally the 99.9% of the traveling public who follow the rules. Is there a penalty for violating it, even if it's, thrown on after the fact, after they've crashed?
Captain.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, yes, there is by statute in the bond schedule a penalty for going past the road closed sign. Once you get, if you are unfortunate enough to get blown over and close the road, there's enhanced penalties for that. Yes, sir.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question about basically the conveying the information to the truck drivers that there's a high wind situation. And I'm saying this with the idea that a lot of those folks can't speak English, probably can't read English. And you put up on, English words on the sign, saying, road closed to high profile vehicles, tip blow over hazard. But how do we get that? I mean, have you done any, I don't know, analyzing the situation when talking to the drivers to make sure that, number one, we're getting that message to the drivers, because we're not going to fix the out of state situation with how they're licensed and how they get approved. So what, do you think we're doing enough? Do you think there's an issue here about how our signage is displaying the information so our truck drivers that are traveling through the state understand that there's a hazard ahead? And that's my general question about, are we doing enough?
Captain.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, thank you. I can tell you that we use the high vis signs, the overhead signs along the route. We also have monitors within our ports of entry. When they enter the state at Evanston, well, all of our ports of entry have the 511 monitors up. So if they have any questions, and through our Title VI program, we have the capability to use interpreters for them. As you stated, we can't control every state and their testing process is their federal regulations that require them to be able to read and speak and communicate in the English language. Yes, there is, sir. And that's part of the CDL requirement.
Philip.
Yeah, that what it really wasn't. That was part of my question. My issue is what are we doing here in the state of Wyoming? I don't care about Nebraska or Idaho or wherever else. Do you think as a professional and law enforcement person that are we doing enough to convey the information to those people, or are they just going off down the roads, not caring about it and not thinking it applies to them? Because I don't know why, but to get an insight on what these truck drivers are thinking, like when they actually get caught tipping over, did they know? Did they deliberately just violate for lack of a better word, a road closed sign? Or did they are they unaware of the danger? I mean, and this is an in-state thing. I don't care about federal regulations. Okay. I mean, I'm trying to make the situation better for us here in Wyoming. So that's my point of view. So thank you for the answer.
Captain.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb. As far as trying to communicate and have an actual statistics, I don't have any on there. What we're doing as a state, we have those abilities to put the signs up, and we have the communications within our port of entry to give them the best advice and road conditions across their route of travel as we can. To answer, I mean, statistically, I don't have any answers for you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I made a note. We're going to go back and just dig into this a little bit, and we'll report back just on what you're asking, I think.
Senator Pappas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suspect based on conversations I had at the Wyoming Trucking Association meeting just recently, that the issue is probably inexperienced drivers. The industry is really shortchanged now when it comes to drivers. They're looking for people, and so they're putting people on the road a lot sooner. They get their CDL and they have no experience, and then when they get to Wyoming, they have less experience driving in wind and in ice and snow. Frankly, I just think that the industry, because of the shortage of professional qualified truck drivers, we're getting young folks or very inexperienced folks that don't know how to drive in a wind and snow. And frankly, I think that's a big issue.
Wouldn't you agree?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. And I think maybe a different way of looking at this, kind of in some of the discussions I've had with this is I'm aware that I know a lot of the companies, when a trucker does go through this and they're cited for, tipping over or whatever, a lot of times from what I've understood is that the companies will actually pay those fines for the drivers. Drivers will pick up, they'll move on, they'll get going. And so it's not really a deterrent to the driver themselves. They're paid by the mile and they're kind of forced on this. If my wheels aren't turning, I'm not making money situation. And so they're going to do anything and everything to keep those wheels turning as specifically as possible. And so I guess maybe I would think about this, we look at the percentage of time closed and we say we close it to high profile, but if we can't tell if it's a high profile when it's loaded and 40,000 pounds, this one, and 40,002 pounds, the other one, and it does blow over, becomes an issue. So I'm wondering maybe if the committee doesn't want to dive into this a little bit deeper, because this seems to be the biggest issue that plagues I-80 besides weather specifically, right? That if we have a way of disincentivizing running these signs a little bit heavier and enforcing this penalty on the driver as opposed to the company themselves paying this and making this stick a little bit more. I'm certainly in favor of that because it's keeping our public safe, right? We've seen also many of our troopers. I can remember the video of the truck driver going down Rock Springs and watching a semi roll over on top of a highway patrol vehicle. So I think that's kind of what we're all trying to get to here is we've got a serious situation where these truckers seem to be ignoring or not caring, as Senator Kolb was saying, and whether or not we have any influence or you in the administrative branch have any influence over that is you're exactly right, Captain. We've given you all the tools that you have and you're using them. Maybe it's up to us on this side of the dais to determine whether or not we need to have something more informative and or more punitive for breaking the law. So Representative Berger.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your answers. Question I have as far as all the crash data, is there data on how many of those crashes involve cell phones or any electronic devices? It seems that I see a lot of people, especially those drivers. I'm not going to pick on drivers, but there's a lot of people driving I-80 that are looking at their electronic device and not just their phone, but their iPad while they're driving, and they have it right there in front of them. And it's a scary situation. Do you have that data for us,
Captain?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, I don't have actual data for you, but I can tell you that as I've reviewed inspections over the years, yes, we have, we've cited drivers for that. Actual collection, I mean, if they get in a crash and their company provides us with their in-cab cameras, because they're trying to mitigate some of this crash as well, because I mean, $150,000 truck plus the trailer, they have a vested interest in it as well. So yeah, we get downloads of video so we can do a proper investigation, because most likely that driver is going to get fired, but to have actual data, how many citations we've issued, I don't have that for you, sir. I can get that and provide it to you and to the committee.
Any further discussions thus far on I-80, specifically to the first page that we have the information on? Okay, Director.
Mr. Chairman, one of the other issues while I have Captain here on the I-80 was the differential speed limit that was brought up as a potential topic. And while I have the Captain here, he can probably talk about some of the agency's concerns about having a differential speed on any road in relation to any types of vehicles in our concerns.
Captain, you look like you were caught off guard there, but
no, sir. No. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Lieutenant Reagan, who is the commercial carrier lieutenant at this time, he is a member of the American Trucking Research Institute, and they have looked into this. And a lot of the states are going away from the differential speed for CMVs versus the common, our four-wheel cars, as we call them. Because when you get two trucks trying to race up a hill, it's causing a jam. So what a lot of states are looking at are the maintaining right-hand lanes and adding lanes for the commercial vehicles when they're having to climb hills. And I know Wyoming is a very mountainous I-80, but we've seen that and I believe that's worked very well, especially out of Carbon County. Having driven the Interstate 80 quite a bit, and up the summit out of Laramie, it works very well to keep the trucks to the right side of the road and allow the faster moving vehicles to pass them on the left.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a great theory, but I got to report that they don't follow that rule, and nor have I ever. I would have been very joyous to witness a truck driver who is racing up a hill in the left lane, not moving over to the right lane, be ticketed. I have never, ever, ever seen that happen. Look forward to it. But the vehicles are in the wrong lane when they obviously are being, I don't know, unprofessional, maybe is a better way of saying this, that they should have moved over and didn't for whatever reason, because one truck driver figured he could pass the other and he can't. And blocks up, it could be 15, 20 minutes worth of time blocked up on the interstate, which causes other problems. I mean, how many tickets have you issued for people being in the left-hand lane in the last year? I mean, I would like to hear that statistic. If not, get back with the numbers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To preface that, we also, I want to make sure that Senator, you're aware, we do not have a law that restricts travel in the left-hand lane and on the 2-lane. You're speaking specifically on the 3 lanes where they're going up and they're supposed to be out of that 3rd lane? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Captain.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cole. So yes, for like the 3-lane, I've issued citations to drivers, not just truck drivers, but drivers in general that don't move to the right. When you see that sign that says keep right, accept a pass. I've issued many citations over my career for that. Exact numbers I can't tell you. And down on the interstate, the troopers I know issue citations when they can, and I can get you those numbers for that violation.
And I'd also point out to just keep in mind, we're kind of hyper focused right now in the trucking industry. And I also want it to be clear that it's not just trucks that we see on I-80. However, it's a large consideration of the population, but we do see a very valid amount of drug busts and stuff like that along I-80 that our troopers are doing. It's their job is not solely enforcing on trucks. There's a lot of speeders, and as Representative Stivar has mentioned, doing over 100 miles an hour, we've seen an increase in that. So I appreciate the work that you guys do, and also thus being in the right place at the right time also happens to be a tough deal. And so if you just don't happen to have that trooper sitting there watching, you're probably not going to catch them. But yes, Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chief, you're also understaffed, correct? And YDOT, you're also understaffed and trying to clean the roads of snow and clean up the sides. That's my point. It's back to that. How do we get the public back into, hey, come be a patrolman, come work for YDOT. I mean, I remember when those jobs were some of the best jobs to go after when I was a kid. But anyways, you're doing that understaffed, correct?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, thank you for that. Yes, again, I think you hit it right on the head of being at the right place at the right time, and the numbers, obviously quantity. If we fully staffed, we'd probably have more opportunity to be at the right place at the right time. I think one of our number one jobs is how do we make not only working for YDOT more desirable, but the entire state is having the same issue. And so trying to make our jobs as public servants a little more desirable in hopes that we can shift the paradigm right now. And I know Assistant Chief has a comment as well.
Yes, Mr. DeHoff.
Mr. Chairman, committee, more on the differential speed limits. We did come prepared to give you some more, maybe, information for you to, for your consideration. We had looked at some previous studies, and so I want to give you that information. And so cars and large trucks when you do differential speed limits, you have a greater speed variation between vehicles and trucks, and the higher number of vehicles passing each other, thus you're compromising safety. So you're increasing the vehicle interactions. So when we're setting speed limits, what you would really like to see is, I'm going to use the word harmony, speed harmony. If everyone drove the speed limit, now remember, we do have grades in Wyoming, but if we could keep everybody in a 10-mile-per-hour pace and keep the vehicle interactions down, that just turns around and gives you safety because you're eliminating those interactions. So I just wanted to give you that little anecdotal information. I want to give you 3 more just to think about to kind of hit it more. Right now, already naturally occurring out there, we have designated speed limit, right? Everybody's driving the same speed limit. Naturally occurring, the commercial vehicle drivers are driving about 4 miles per hour less than vehicles on average. Now, you do have other commercial vehicle drivers or companies that are putting mandated speed limits, governors on their trucks, because you will see trucks only going 65. So you could do a mandated speed limit too on commercial vehicles. But then again, we're back to that differential speed, which we would like to keep everybody about right here, driving the same speed and not have that speed variation.
Hold on just a second, if we could. I've got a question here from Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Traveling up through Idaho, Idaho has 80 mile an hour for vehicles and 70 miles an hour for trucks. Have you looked into what Idaho's done on that in their data?
Mr. Chairman, through you, Representative Stivar, I have not, but I will take a look at that and talk with those gentlemen. We'll see them next week and get their input on that. From the studies that we have gone with our state traffic engineer, those states are going away from the DSLs. So I can get that information. I just know the data that we have analyzed, we're giving you that. Our take on it is to try and keep everybody at the same speed to get rid of the interactions.
Good. Co-chair.
So along those lines, I've also seen states that have a minimum speed limit. Would that be more advisable than say you have to go at least 70 miles an hour on the interstate?
Mr. DeHoff.
Again, I will probably go back to the remark. I would like to try and keep everyone within a 10 mile per hour pace to try and keep harmony out there, keep the turbulence down, to keep the interactions down. To reinforce what the captain said, on those grades where we are seeing speed differential, we would sure love to get a truck climbing lane there. Even along all of I-80, if you put in a 3rd lane to try and get the interactions down, that would help too.
And I think that comes only at a cost of about $3 billion. So Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a cheaper idea. How can we just keep in the right-hand lane except to pass on a 2-lane road? Is there a problem with that? I mean, I think inherently we're talking about a speed differential issues in the state of Wyoming. Well, it's inherently going to be a problem just because of our topography and the drivers we have, right? Because we've got speed limited trucks to 65 or less. That's on a good day, they're doing 65. And then we have regular drivers probably doing 85, right? I mean, that's the reality of what we got in the state of Wyoming. So why wouldn't getting the right-hand lane except the pass idea, what would be the negatives towards that, towards traffic flow on, say, on the interstates? To hear your opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Batter up.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Senator Cole, you're correct. To keep the interactions down will increase the safety. I think that becomes an enforcement issue. I think you can put a sign up. I can tell you that 93% of the crashes out there are behavioral. So it would be nice if the drivers would obey the laws and obey the signs and drive maybe how you were taught by your parents. And that is the issue. We can put up signs, we can put up the laws. It's a great idea to keep them to the right, but behaviorally, they will not do that because you get the impatient driver or you get the digitally drunk driver that's not paying attention and they run into the back of a vehicle that's going slower.
Follow up.
Well, this sounds an awful lot like the 3rd lane going up a hill that we just talked about. Okay. I understand it's enforcement and I understand we don't have people everywhere. But the issue is if we don't do anything or put an expectation out there that we expect a different type of behavior, we're never going to get that kind of behavior. I mean, I just think as a matter of course, I don't know why it's a bad thing to say right lane only until passing. mean, I haven't heard, I mean, your issue or your reason why you're saying it doesn't work for a 2-lane is the same reason I'd say it doesn't work for a 3-lane. Thank you.
I don't think there was a question there. I think that was more just a comment. Senator Brennan?
Yeah, just kind of a comment too, along these lines. When I go down to Colorado, Colorado has a do not travel in the left-hand lane law, but you would never know it. So just a comment that I don't know that that's the answer.
Captain Meyer, do you have, you kind of, between the two of them, I think you kind of want to say something. So go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Senator Cole, I mean, we do have a law that, you know, the black and white regulatory sign that says keep right except to pass. That is an enforceable statute that we can issue citations for drivers that violate that particular statute. So again, it's, you know, being at the right place at the right time, observing that. And so, yes, I agree with you, keeping that to the right for the slower moving traffic, or because the whole idea behind that keep it right is because that center lane is also available to use for the facing traffic. So if they're north and south, that, you know, that traffic going the opposite direction has right to that lane as well for passing and traveling.
Senator Pappas.
And just one other thought, I think it comes that driving on the right lane, except to pass, does come at a cost, I would imagine. And you can tell me if it's true or not, that lane would wear out a lot faster than the other lanes. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad, because you'd replace one lane without having to replace it all, but I'm sure that's an issue.
Mr. Dehoff.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Senator Pappas, you are correct. There would be more axles on that lane, so the wear on that would be more than the left lane. You are correct.
Okay, committee. Director, I think you guys got a second page. Did you guys want to go in depth on that? And actually, Mr. Dehoff, you were still going over the differential speed limits. You said you had 3 sets of statistics. I think you only got through 1 before we started peppering you. So.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I pretty much did. I don't think it was 3 statistics. It was just pretty much 3, things for you to consider, putting it 3 different ways. I think the last one I had, or I guess the last 2, is speed variation and vehicle interactions have a direct impact on highway safety. I think that's a good, one that we would recommend, to think about. Higher number of interactions among vehicles increases the chances that accidents will occur. So again, if we can keep the interactions down and keep speed in harmony and not turbulence, I think we are reducing those interactions, which has a direct impact. Thank you.
Captain, remind me, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't want to even call them accidents anymore, right? They're crashes because there's always somebody that's at fault. So.
Mr. Chairman, we don't determine who's at fault. We just report the data, what we see at the crash scene, skid marks, yaw marks, that. But yeah, so they're crashes. They're not accidents.
All right. Mr. Director, back over to you. If I think we touched a little bit on the second page already with the blowovers, but I don't know if that's where you guys want to roll into next. Mr. Fulton, please continue.
Mr. Chair, just quickly on expenditures. So as we looked at how much we spend, so roughly over the last 7 years, we average around $68 million. That's total expenditures. That's construction and maintenance on both sides. And then comparing that to our total WIDOT expenditures of about $760 million. So approximately 9% of the funds that we have go to I-80 on a yearly basis.
What is that in proportion to total mileage? The 400 and some odd miles that we have across the state, what is that proportionally to the amount of miles you guys cover? Is that proportional for the 9% that you guys spend?
Let's see. So roughly 800 miles and we're roughly 6,700 miles total. So.
Yeah, about right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Pappas.
Yeah, so that total construction number, total expenditure number, is that only for roads and bridges, or are we looking at other whiteout expenditures like aviation and the other things you have to take care of?
Mr. Chair, Senator, so the total is our budget. So that was the total budget number department wise. Yeah, for everything over all the 7 years average. And then the I80 numbers is strictly cost to I80, being construction projects, anything from paving to signs, striping, anything like that.
So it might be helpful for the committee because that was a good question, Senator. Maybe get the proportionality of just the roads. Looking at your budget, yes, that's a huge amount of your guys' entire budget, but looking at the proportionality of what that would be to just the roads, and the maintenance across the rest of the roads would probably be helpful for this committee to understand. It seems like there's maybe an inordinate amount of money being put on I-80, mainly because of the amount of traffic, but I think that would be helpful.
Right. So, Mr. Chair, just on average, we let around $300 million a year to total contracts. And if you look at the average for I-80, it's around construction wise, let contracts would be around 56 million. So probably a sixth.
And just to follow up, so you said 400 or 800 miles of total lanes compared to how much statewide?
So
What's the rough proportion?
So
in
about
terms of
6,700 miles total. Is that correct, Mr. Gillette?
Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Co-Chairman, I think I-80 represents 6% of our roads.
But 1/6 of your maintenance budget, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
You have no question? Yes, Senator Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification's sake, I think the number that I was wanting to hear was the total percentage as it relates to roads, not to air transportation, not to WyoLink, not to anything else. Like, so I could evaluate just what is actually spent on 80 as it pertains to roads. And that's maintenance and all in what as compared to everything else in the state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Chairman, at risk of doing public math here, it sounds like about 16% of maintenance dollars goes to I-80, which comprises only 6% of the overall road mileage in Wyoming. Is that roughly correct?
We've got 3-4 engineers sitting here at this table, so I'm hoping our math skills are honed in.
Yeah, that's a sheep herder equation there. So let's see what the engineers think.
Mr. Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark Gillette, Chief Engineer with WYDOT. What I did is we have about 400 miles of I-80. We have about 6,700 miles of roads. I just divided the two numbers and came up with 6%. Now, probably isn't proportionately quite accurate because I-80 is a 4-lane road, 6,700 miles of total road. That's center line mileage. So I just want to make that clear.
See, we got the engineer minds going now. Mr. DeHoff.
Mr. Chairman, also a thing to take under consideration, the maintenance dollars will probably be more than you see on the other roads from a volume standpoint.
Yep, exactly.
So you'll see deterioration on I-80 quicker than you would see on your other 600 or 6,000 miles of road. Keith and I were talking, the districts try to do, each district, there's 2 districts on I-80. They'll try to do 3 to 4 projects on I-80 every year in order to stay up with the maintenance of I-80. Right now we're in preservation and they're doing shave and paves. And so when you have that many trucks on the road, it deteriorates. We need to make sure we get back to that road. If I could do it in 7 years, but we're getting there between 8 and 10 years. So if you, now that concrete section in Rock Springs, of course, that's going to be longer than 7 years. But when you see the shave and paves, we need to get back to that road in about 7 with the amount of trucks that we see on that road.
A lot of good information here, committee, and certainly for the new members, hope the osmosis here, there's a lot to gather. So,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, in relation to Senator Cole's and Senator Boner's conversation, I'll nail down that budget that is just road centric versus I-80, eliminate some of the other issues that are kind of in that 700 million figure and get you to the answer that you're looking for. Apologize, we don't have that right now.
appreciate that. And then looks like after we've beat that dead horse a little bit, looks like we've got the I-80 closures overview, Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is just tracking data from our traffic management center, TMC, of just the amount of closures on a monthly basis and the percent that's closed to either all traffic or just to commercial. So like some of the commercial could include that high profile wind location. So. And as you can see, the winter months, that's when you see the spikes or the.
Committee, any questions on I-80 closures overview?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add it, and I mean, it's really obvious on this graph. If you look at the January, February, you got that little yellowish color that's really high comparatively to the average last couple of years. I think it's all attested to the weather that we had this last year. It's just significant that what we've seen, and so it's kind of shockingly and glaringly standing out that the first couple months of this year were quite a bit different than the previous 3 years.
Yes, Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any data, like say back in 2010, 12, 13, 14 on road closures? Because my sense is the general public feels like that road's closing a whole lot more than it ever has before. And I think, and that may be true or maybe not true, but I think if we had some historical data that would give us some reference to just where we're at today, I think would be helpful.
Mr. Dehoff.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, we do not have that with us. I'm not sure if we go back that far, but we do have data out there and it is available to the public on the 511 site. It does show, the percentage of when it's closed to commercial vehicles, when it's totally closed to everyone. I can get that data for you though. I do believe you're correct saying that people are thinking the road closes a lot more. I believe traffic volumes are up. In the time that I've been at YDOT, this was probably the worst winter we have seen. It seems like the wind has really changed. The environment has changed. So I can't disagree with the perception that's out there that it's closed, but it is closed for the safety of the traveling public.
Any further questions from the committee for YDOT on I-80 information?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Wiley.
I kind of want to bounce back to the expenditures a little bit. So when you do the repairs and renewals on Interstate 80, you repair the entire section of travel, right? You don't just do one lane at a time. It's always an entire section, both lanes.
Mr. Fulton.
Mr. Chair, we try to, but we will have projects depending on the deterioration. We have some that we have done just in one lane because that's where we're seeing a lot of the potholes. So we may just do patching, but for most like when we do a big project, we try to do both lanes.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. So touching back to these instances and these cases to where we're trying to, average the speeds out and limit the instances of these crashes and enclosures and stuff. Have we ever looked at any statistical data instead of doing speed limitations and stuff on a weight limit limitation to restrict anything over, say, 26,000 pounds to a right lane travel.
I don't think we have.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Follow up.
Could we maybe look at something like that? See what other states around the nation are doing and what information we have there?
Mr. DeHoff.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wiley, if I could restate your question, because my brain's going and I'm kind of remembering something. You're asking, is there something out there that restricts it by weight that, so if you're over 26,000 pounds, you have to stay in the right lane?
Mr. Chairman, yes, correct. And then in my mind, that could limit the one thing, the differential in speeds that we're having on an average. And then also the instances of the crash occurrences. Like we said, a lot of the times on I-80, my experience is when you get these buildups and you get these, these larger vehicles, and especially if they have governors and they're limited to certain speeds, they're stacking up and piling up for several miles across the interstate. And I think a lot of the crash instances could be occurring during this time.
Mr. DeHoff.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Representative, I guess I was lucky. I have a good note here. I don't know what year it was. I'll get more information, but we did do a seasonal lower limit that was tried on I-80. Now that was a speed limit. It wasn't restricted them to the right lane, but I can imagine that the way that this study went, it's an enforcement issue again. I mean, you can put that restriction, but then you have to have somebody there to enforce it. But I can check into that and get back to you.
And the last one here, Representative.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll keep it short. So my thoughts there were just since, if we go by weight and these are commercial licenses, commercial vehicles, the driver is going to be more incentivized to follow these rules and regulations that we put in place because they want to keep that license, especially keep food put on the table. Anyway, thank you.
Yes, Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me that I-80 is closed most often in the Elk Mountain, Arlington area. I don't know if that's true, but that seems to happen a lot. So my question to you, isn't there something that we can do along that stretch of I-80 to try to keep it open more often if that data is correct? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Aside from rebuilding and going the outside route that we've all heard about, is there anything beyond that and the snow fences that you guys have all tried that this legislature could do to look at trying to fix those areas?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, you are correct. The majority of the time, that is our problem area between Rollins and Laramie. So your diagnosis there is correct. This year it was actually from Rollins to Rock Springs. It was just that's where the snow fell and the wind was up. One of the things that we are trying to do, and we have done it, is snow fence. Snow fence does help with blowing snow. So we continue to maintain the snow fence. And I think we do have, Mr. Fulton, remind me, I think there is a snow fence project there to add a little bit more snow fence. So we are continuing to look at that because the problem that we have there again is the wind. We do have a study that shows, and I think if they redid the study, it would probably even show worse. It is the worst section of road on I-80 for wind. There is so much wind, and wind is what causes that road to close. I mean, first of all, it's a crash, but the reason the crash is because there was wind and visibility, and it closes the road. If I could somehow turn the wind off or the blowing snow, if that snow would come down straight, we have enough plows, we have enough plow drivers, we have enough expertise, we could keep that open. But it's the wind, it's just blowing, snow. But you are correct.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just add a little bit to that. In my travels to District 1 with District Engineer Tarango, one of his concerns and one of the things that he brought to my attention was sometimes the landowner and the negotiations with the landowner to get the snow fence on it isn't or doesn't go very well, and therefore we're having troubles getting snow fence where we need it because of the negotiation with the landowner on placement of that snow fence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have two questions. One is, and I know the answer to this, but I keep explaining because I went and researched or asked myself, people of your department, but everybody says to me, put more salt on the road. That will fix it. 100% content. So explain to us why putting more salt in your mixture does not solve the problem.
Mr. Dehoff.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Representative, you can send those constituents and I'll go through the science, a very long one, but to respect the chairman, I'm going to just use the word blowing snow. When you leave the residual of salt on a road and you have blowing snow and the low temperatures of the highs and lows here, that creates a bigger problem. So I'm going to just say blowing snow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that blowing snow doesn't happen a lot on I-80 in Utah. And that's what I keep telling everybody. Anyways, my last question, your current construction projects on I-80. Right now, you're doing a lot of patching, and between especially Rock Springs and Rollins, that's just patching. Are we gonna, is that for just the rest of the year, or are the plan is to patch them now and then start resurfacing all that this year? Is that plan?
I think another way of asking that question is, first, I don't know, did the committee get a copy of the most recent STIP? And that would give, so the most recent STIP would be probably the best way, but if you guys have an update on where some of these discussions might be for I-80 for complete tear down,
Mr. Chair, yes. So, we are doing a lot of patching right now, and then we do have a bigger project that will be let later this year in September. Unfortunately, money and funding wise, it won't be in construction till next year, but we do have more projects planned for I-80 coming up in the next few years, especially in that area.
All right, committee, we are going to let YDOT off the hook here. Thank you, gentlemen. We are going to move into the Wyoming Truckers Association on the same exact issue and get Ms. Furch up here. And we will ask some of the questions that we were peppering these guys with to her and see if she has some answers for us as well. So Ms. Furch.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, co-chairman, members of the committee. I'm Sheila Furch, the president and CEO of the Wyoming Trucking Association. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today. I've been furiously writing topics as you asked questions. I'm sure there's some that I've forgotten, so I appreciate you just asking away as we go through some things. And some of the points I want to make, YDOT did an excellent job of covering a lot of the things that we also see and also agree with. And so I'll probably be jumping around and beg your grace as I do that, but certainly want to give you the industry, or at least my members' perspective on I-80 and some of the issues that we're facing. You've hit the nail on the head. My members and my associates in particularly Nebraska and Utah also think I-80 was closed more. It was a nasty, nasty winter. And that does affect commerce, and it affects the carrier's ability to have stable delivery. We had a lot of complaints from people that deliver fuel because there were fuel stations that were running out because of the closures. But the roads are closed for a reason, and they recognize that. No one wants to put their drivers in jeopardy. No one wants to put a commercial vehicle, as Captain Wyrick talked about, that costs upwards of $200,000 plus commodities on there that can be up of $500,000 to $1 million. No one wants to risk that being on a road that's not safe because of weather. So we get that. We understand that. It's frustrating. We don't like it, but it's reality right now. And we understand some of the constraints that YDOT is having with manpower and resources. My members feel the same thing. Right now, there's about a 78,000 person driver shortage nationally. we figure we're going to have to hire 1.5 million drivers over the next 5 years. Those drivers aren't out there. So that's a huge issue, and it's going to continue to plague not just the trucking industry, but state agencies that rely on CDL holders, and not just CDL holders, but diesel techs. We're seeing a huge shortage in diesel techs that work on those trucks to keep those trucks safe. So it's just kind of a convergence of a lot of different issues that I think we're all feeling right now. And while we get it, I think it's imperative that we sit down and talk about them. And that's something that I have talked recently with YDOT about. Perhaps we need to get some stakeholder roundtables going on issues that we're seeing on I-80 and putting heads together. Captain Wyrick briefly talked about the Transportation Safety Coalition, and that's a group that was put together several years ago by Governor Meade for the transportation industry as well as state agencies, not just Department of Transportation and Highway Patrol, but also Workforce Services. And we have FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, as well as NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety. We have representatives that also come to those meetings to sit down and talk about how can we do better. And it's not, again, Chairman Brown, I appreciate you saying we're kind of focusing on the trucking industry. And of course, that's going to be my focus, but it's the entire motoring public, passenger vehicles as well. And that's what the Transportation Safety Coalition is looking at. So there are several issues. And I want to tell you that the Wyoming Trucking Association many years ago were the proponents behind getting variable message signs and variable speed limits on I-80. We felt from our carriers that traveled that was going to be a huge benefit